welcome to all of you from, as Jerry said, my home study here in Port Townsend, Washington. It's a town of about 10,000 located on the Olympic Peninsula on the far side of the country from you. I appreciate the invitation from your worship committee to be with you this morning. I also appreciate the time and skill that they have put into preparing this service. Since we're at the beginning of the new year and thinking of time, I thought for our invocation today, I'd borrow words of author William Saroyan from his book, The Time of Your Life. These words: in the time of your life live, so that in that good time there shall be no ugliness or death for yourself or for any life that your life touches. Seek goodness everywhere. When it is found, bring it out of its hiding place. Let it be free and unashamed. Discover in all things that which shines and is beyond corruption. Encourage virtue into whatever heart it may have been driven into secrecy or sorrow by the shame and terror of the world. In the time of your life live, so that in that wondrous time you shall not add to the misery and sorrow of the world, but shall smile instead to its infinite delight and mystery. Jerry? My sermon this morning is titled, Do You Like Your Life? And my reading from poet Nancy Henry speaks to a time in her life when she did not like her life. The poem is titled Keys, a double meaning as you will see, and it also relates to the return of the sun at this time of the year. Keys by Nancy Henry. When things got hard, I used to drive and keep on driving. That'll be coming up shortly. So I'm gonna start over. Keys by Nancy Henry. When things got hard, I used to drive and keep on driving. Once to North Carolina, once to Arizona. I'm through with all of that now, I hope. The last time was years ago. But oh, how I would drive and keep on driving. The universe around me, all well in my control. Anything I wanted on the radio, the air blasting hot or cold. Sobbing as loudly as I cared to sob. Screaming as loudly as I needed to scream. I would live on apples and black coffee, shower at truck stops, sleep curled up in the cozy back seat I loved. The last time I left at 3 a.m. By New York State, she was driving, I believe, from Maine. By New York State, I stopped screaming. By Tulsa, I stopped sobbing. By the time I pulled into Flagstaff, I was thinking about the canyon. I was so empty. Thinking about the canyon, I was. I sat on the rim at dawn, let all the colors fill me. It was cold. I saw my breath like steam from a soup pot. I saw small fossils in the gravel. I saw how much world there was, how much darkness could be swept out by the sun. Our special music for this morning's service is a hymn that's found in our teal-colored hymnal titled, I Know I Can. I think this hymn may not be familiar to that many of you, but it's one of my favorites. And the lyrics were written by a ministerial colleague of mine, the Reverend Dennis Hamilton, now retired. The music was composed by Jeannie Gagne. Dennis provided me with a little backstory on the genesis of this hymn, saying that originally he had written the words to go with another tune, but they couldn't get a written okay from the composer. And when the deadline for the new hymnal was upon them, he worked all night over the phone with composer Jeannie Gagne to make the deadline. He sent me an email saying, Jeannie and I collaborated on an emotionally similar but totally different song. I wrote the lyrics, she provided the music. It was done over the phone. I stayed up all night to meet the deadline. Funny how deadlines work, he said. Now performing this hymn are Mike Menifee. He's the choir director of the Kitsap Unitarian Universalist Fellowship in Bremerton, Washington, about an hour from Port Townsend here on the Olympic Peninsula where I live. And Mike is accompanied by his daughter, Alina Hemingway. And it's Mike who's also put together the visuals for this YouTube. I Know I Can. The words will appear on the screen.
That destination clear.
Yes, it's clear. Those troubles may wait me at every turn,
but I know,
yes,
I know I can go on.
So brother,
take my hand.
Sisters, help me sing my song. For I know hope awaits me at every turn.
And I know, yes, I know
we will go on.
I hope you enjoy that song as I do. Do you like your life? This is the simple, straightforward question that some years ago, seemingly out of the blue, brashly intruded itself into the forefront of my consciousness. It was like seeing a large billboard alongside the road with these words emblazoned on it. So I thought some attention should be paid, and I went through an exercise in which I explored this question from a number of different angles. Later that year, I made a major life change, and looking back, realized that this question and the accompanying exploration had set the stage for that change. So this morning, as we are near the beginning of a new year, I'd like to invite you to join me on the journey that I took at that time, and to ask yourself that same question: do you like your life? So for the next 25 minutes or so, I'm going to take you into and out of 8 different rooms. And in each of those rooms, you will have a chance to ask yourself this question from a different angle or perspective, so that by the end of this process, you'll be all set for the new year. Such a deal. So here we go. Room number 1, do you like your life? Do I like my life? Is this an important question? Is this a fruitful or worthwhile question in terms of finding my way in life? Does it really matter whether or not I like my life? What does liking my life have to do with how I should live my life, or what life asks of me or calls me to do, or of what my responsibility to life should be? Has my life been given to me so that I should like it? Do I see in any other form of nature about me any concern at all with this kind of question? Does the infinite, unoriginated, self-existent, eternally creative power of all life and being care in the least matter whether or not I like my life? Do I not hear a great guffaw of cosmic laughter when I complain, but I don't like that? Isn't one required to push through and beyond one's personal likes and dislikes in life? I mean, if I were to be guided only by what I thought I liked, would that not lead to a completely self-centered, narcissistic, and inwardly turned life? And would I not shrink and shrink until I was a little irritating bundle of open nerve endings festering upon this great earth? Do your duty to life. Take your role in life. Carry your weight in life. Be a servant of life. This is what matters. Forget the question, do I like my life? It's a wimpy, whiny, ego-oriented, hedonistic question that should not even rank in the hierarchy of questions related to the values for living. There's no decent religious philosophy of life that could possibly emerge with this question as its starting point. And if you don't believe me, ask John Calvin, with whose religious philosophy I was raised. Okay, let's try a second room. Room number 2. Do you like your life? Arthur Miller's popular play from a number of years ago, The Death of a Salesman, is the tragic story of Willie Loman and his family. Willie Loman, who wants so badly to be liked, to fit in, to be somebody in this world. He spends his whole life trying to sell himself and his family. But behind a little bauble of ornamentation that he endlessly polishes for public display, Willie Loman has nothing to sell and nothing to give, because he's following only what he imagines others want of him or for him or from him. Willie Loman doesn't know what he wants or who he is apart from them. He has no independent point of view or sense of interior calling. All he hears and knows are outer voices. So what is it to draw near to the end of a life and have to admit that you've never done a single thing in your life that you really wanted to do? That your whole life has been based on pleasing others and doing what you thought they liked and wanted of you. Now, in the play, Willie Loman couldn't even get so far as to admit that. If he had, there might have been some hope. And then sadly, when his oldest son, Biff, was close to breaking out of this same prison, Willie did everything in his power to stop the escape, to the point of taking his own life, which, as I recall, was effective in keeping Biff from breaking out and moving forward. What a frantic, humorless horror of a life it is when you only live what you take to be your duty. You pay, and the world around you pays for not attending to what you really like, because it takes a tremendous effort to squash desire, to thwart eros, which is life's energy in you. And of course, you can't really thwart that energy. It just goes underground. You can feel the molten magma moving beneath the surface, rumbling and threatening. And you can sense the fear behind the front, fear of disapproval, fear of standing out, fear of being found out, which is the discovery that you are essentially hollow inside, just a cardboard cutout of a human being, all exterior and show, with no knowledge of who you are or what is real or what you love and are attracted to in this world. So there's a little advice in this second room, and the advice is this: to live at least a little of your own life, if not for yourself, then for your children, that they might live theirs. To each day devote at least a little time for yourself and no one else, to do something that has no other aim than that you take pleasure in it. Over the years of my ministry, I have officiated at multitudes of memorial services, and I've noticed that in remembering people, we remember most keenly and with greatest pleasure what it is that they liked to do. Not necessarily what they were good at or what they were respected for or what brought them success, though often these are related. But what is remembered with most pleasure is what gave them most pleasure. Room number 3, do you like your life? How do I put together my experiences from these first 2 rooms? How do I coordinate my desire to relate to the larger community, to the community of larger life, to contribute to and to serve the greater good, and to attend to my responsibilities and obligations of being a citizen of my society and a citizen of this planet? How do I put this together with my desire to do what I like? The advice of mythologist and student of world religions Joseph Campbell, whom I was privileged to know 40 years ago when I was in my early 30s, Campbell's advice, which I've paid some attention to, is to follow your bliss. Through following your bliss, Campbell believed, you can most readily and helpfully serve the world. So what is your bliss? According to Campbell, it's that which calls most deeply to you from within. What is it you most like to do? Where do you feel the deep sense of being? Where are you most at home, most free, most centered, most related, most on track, most deeply happy? That's the clue, said Campbell. That's the creative life energy stirring within you. That's the voice of God, as it were, calling to you. Campbell's advice is to move toward that, discover what it is, nurture and develop it, and then try to make your contribution to larger life through that. A vital life, he says, vitalizes. Or again, don't ask yourself what the world needs. Ask yourself what makes you come alive, and then go and do that, because What the world needs is people who have come alive. I want to add here that this bliss that Campbell is talking about, often misunderstood, is not an ego-oriented bliss. It's not about ease or the easy way. It's not necessarily about what brings you direct comfort, and it's certainly not about financial security. The bliss that Campbell is talking about is something deeper than ego interest, though hopefully the ego will be interested enough at some point to pay attention to the deeper bliss level of its being. But the bliss that Campbell is talking about was expressed in a response to an interview question from Bill Moyers, who asked him, what about happiness? If I'm a young person and I want to be happy, what do the myths tell me about happiness? Well, the way to find out about your happiness, answered Campbell, is to keep your mind on those moments when you feel most happy, when you really are happy, not excited, not just thrilled, but deeply happy. This requires, he said, a little bit of self-analysis. What is it that makes you happy? Stay with it, no matter what people tell you. That, says Campbell, is what I call following your bliss. Room number 4, do you like your life? Do you wish sometimes or often that you had been dealt a different hand in life? Do you wish that you were prettier or taller or smarter or stronger or better coordinated or differently shaped or born to different parents or born in a different time or a different place? It's all right to think these thoughts and to fantasize and to daydream. Indeed, I think it's healing to mourn for the road that could not be taken. It's healing to feel sorrow for what isn't but might have been, and for what once was but is no more. And yet, comparison shopping is not the way to make it when it comes to determining whether or not your life has value and is worth living, or whether or not you can be happy. As it turns out, of course, the place of meaning is the place where you are. And it has to do with playing the hand that is dealt you to the best of your ability. Some of you may remember, and again, I'm going to date myself here, but some of you will remember the popular singer and comedian Jimmy Durante. He died in 1980 at the age of 86. Now, Jimmy Durante had an awful voice. It was clipped, gravelly, frog-like. And so that the question was once put to him, how have you made a singing career with such a voice? Well, he croaked, them's the conditions which prevail. Them's the conditions which prevail. In other words, he used what he had, and what a prince he was with that frog-like voice of his. And when it comes to comparing ourselves to others, which it seems is how we live so much of our lives, it may be worth considering that life from the inside may feel and be quite different from what it appears on the outside. I think sometimes, what if the anxieties and wounds of our interior selves would show themselves externally like our physical afflictions do? What if each emotional injury or soul wound, each fear, each sorrow, each anxiety, each self-doubt, each self-loathing, each regret, what if each of these would show themselves outwardly as a bodily injury, a welt or a bruise or a scrape, or even a loss of a limb? How differently we would appear to others, how differently we might treat others, how differently we might regard and treat ourselves. A deceased colleague, the Reverend Dr. Forrest Church, who as a number of you no doubt are aware, served for many years as a senior minister of the All Souls Unitarian Church in New York City. Forrest began one of his many books, this one was Lifelines, with the account of an anonymous letter that was one day put under his study door. And the letter in part read, "What is the meaning of adversity? I don't think I can handle it anymore. I am very tired of this stupid life. I feel absolutely hopeless." Signed, a parishioner, and P.S. Yes, I've had therapy and medication, but I remain hopeless. Please help me. Well, who was the author of this anonymous letter? Fearing possible suicide, Forrest, along with his staff, tried to think who might have written this letter. Discreet inquiries were made, but the staff came up with nothing except the realization that anyone in their congregation might have written that letter. We simply don't know what hidden struggles go on in the interior places of a human life. Room number 5. Do you like your life? Do I like my life? No. No, I don't like my life. I feel like the world is madly racing toward hell and I can't keep up with it. The polar ice caps are melting and I'm just contributing to their demise. I'm not taking proper care of my body, nor paying adequate attention to my interior being. How have you lost your way in life? How are you off the track that you feel you should be on? I assume, I guess, that we are all always at least a little bit lost and at least a little bit off track, but whether or not that is so, this 5th room is a room for trying to stop the bleeding and for having a hard conversation with yourself. This is a room for recognizing that if I keep moving in the direction I'm going to get where I'm heading, and it's not a place that I want to be. So this is a room, not only for taking inventory of your life, but also for taking some action. What is needed to change your life? Do you know? If you don't know, then make an effort to find out. Have a conversation with yourself, speak with a friend, make an appointment with a therapist. But if you do know what is needed to change your life, then for God's sake and your own and the world's, do it. And do it now, not tomorrow, for it seems that day never comes. Take a step in the direction towards which you need to be going. Take a step in that direction, even if it be the tiniest little baby step, even if you move just an inch, even if you can't see exactly where it will lead you, take that step, move in that direction, though it require all the courage and strength you can muster just to move that little bit. This is your life. As far as can be ascertained, you're not coming this way again. At least not in this form and not with this consciousness. So live this life and live it now. Room number 6. Do you like your life? Do I like my life? Yes. Yes, I do like my life. I do. My life is so rich, so full of challenge and possibility, so full of beauty. Even in this time of pandemic, I feel so fortunate. It overwhelms me sometimes. When I was 17, I thought What could it be like to live to be 25 or even 30 years old? I simply couldn't imagine it. I couldn't imagine how life could possibly maintain and sustain its interest for that long. But now at age 73, the years keep flying by, flying by, flying by. And the notion of time itself gets more and more weird. And I can't imagine that I would ever have seen as much as I have or have experienced as much as I do. My life now is not necessarily what I expected or what others expected of me, but it suits me. It suits me just fine. Poet Jane Kenyon, in one of her remarkable poems, summarized a day in her life this way. The poem is titled Otherwise. I got out of bed on 2 strong legs. It might have been otherwise. I ate cereal, sweet milk, ripe, flawless peach. It might have been otherwise. I took the dog uphill to the birch wood. All morning, I did the work I love. At noon, I lay down with my mate. It might have been otherwise. We ate dinner together at a table with silver candlesticks. It might have been otherwise. I slept in a bed in a room with paintings on the walls and planned another day, just like this day. But one day, I know it will be otherwise. And room number 7 is the room where things are otherwise, because there are times in a life when things are otherwise and they will not be different. There are horrific things in this world, as this past year certainly testifies to. And there are horrific things in an individual life. There are horrors beyond words to tell. And this too is one of the rooms of reality. Do you like your life? There are times when it is appropriate to say no, 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 1,000 times no. It's what needs to be said. And the thing to do is to say it and to cry out against it. There are simply times in a life when there is no solution. And there's nothing that can be done except to say that, to say no solution, to hear yourself say it, for others to hear you say it so that they can carry the burden along with you. There is a time for this, and I believe there is room in this universe for this. Says poet Robert Bly, for the winter dark of late December, there is no solution. So this 7th room is a room for living without answers, a room for living with loss, for weeping, for wailing. It's a room for crying out against the powers that be about our human plight and the burden of self-consciousness. Or as the Hebrew psalmist has put it, my God, why hast thou forsaken me? And now the final room, room number 8. Do you like your life? What would you expect to find in this final room? It turns out there's nothing particular in this room to consider except the opportunity to add whatever you think you need to add that may not have been covered for you in this exploration of the other 7 rooms, and to consider which of the other 7 rooms you may need to visit again. Because I suggest that all of these rooms belong to us at one time or another. But are there any of them that you particularly need to revisit as we begin this new calendar year? And I say, please don't be afraid to visit and revisit these rooms. Don't be afraid to look back or to step back in life. Don't be afraid to start over. Don't be afraid to learn what you think you should have learned years ago. It's never too late to grow into yourself or to expand your horizon. Never too late to find a greater depth of meaning and value in life. And so this final room is a room for imagining your future. It's a room of future possibility for yourself, for those close to you, for your community and the world. For I believe that the creative power of life and being will support you in your efforts that are in the direction of an expanded horizon and of the future. As the poet Rabindranath Tagore puts it, all things rush on. They stop not, they look not behind. No power can hold them back. They rush on. And as we join that forward pushing movement, the life energy supports us. Strength will be there beyond what we presently know. Grace will appear that will surprise us with its solicitude. For when all is said and done, I do believe that there is a great grace in this beautiful, terrible world of ours. Or as author Robert Johnson puts it, we take 2 steps forward and we slide 3 steps back. But we get to heaven anyway, because we were headed in the wrong direction to begin with. That's grace. Kathy Williams will now lead us in our closing hymn, For All That Is Our Life. Thank you, Jerry. And it's been good to be with you this morning from the other side of the country. Again, I'd like to thank Jerry and all of those who put together the service for their labor and love. I very much appreciate that. I'd like to close with words of benediction from a colleague of mine, the Reverend Kendall Gibbons, who says, there is finally only one thing required of us, and that is to take life whole, the sunlight and shadows together, to live the life it has given us with courage and humor and truth. We have such a little moment out of the vastness of time for all our wondering and loving. Therefore, let there be no half-heartedness. Rather, let the soul be ardent in its pain, in its yearning, and in its praise. Then shall peace enfold our lives, and glory shall not fade from our lives.